Welcome to Robot It Like It's Hot. This is a part 2 of an instruction that began with Code It Like It's Hot, and the intention is to create a connection between block coding and using robotics in the classroom. My name is Pam Cabe, and I will be doing the presentation for today. First, a little bit about me. I am a media coordinator at Fairview School, which is part of Jackson County Public Schools and located in Sylva, North Carolina. I am a mom to 2 kids, Jackson, who is 22, and Alina, who is 19. I am a wife to my husband, Coleman, and I am a dog mom to a German Shepherd named Willow. The first robot we're going to talk about is a Beebot. A Beebot is specifically designed to be used by younger students, but as you're going to see from instruction today, Beebots can also be used with older students. They are colorful, easy to operate, and very engaging for students to use, and they work out the basics of coding, but allow you to incorporate that coding into basically any kind of instruction that you would do in the classroom. These are the buttons and the controls for the Beebot. They are very simple. If we are looking at the Beebot from the top, there is a forward button, and in a minute we're going to watch a video and you will hear the teacher refer to that button as up. Whatever is simplest for your students to understand, I think is fine. There is a turn right button, a turn left button, a green go button in the center, a back up button, a clear button that will clear any programs that are in the Beebot, and a stop button. So the purpose of this is for students to navigate through a course using these controls. So let's see Beebots in action in a classroom.
Do you see this beautiful thing? What is it? A Beebot. It's a Beebot. If you look right here, it's a robot. It's got wheels. It looks like a bumblebee. There are buttons on the top, like on its back, and I've drawn them right here. In the middle is a green go button, and the other most important button is this X blue. Everyone say blue X. Blue X. Clear. Clear. Blue X means clear. Blue X means clear. Okay, you are going to program it to do things. Like, for example, here's a fun little desk. Let's do something super duper easy. I'm going to tell it to go forward, forward, and let's see what happens. To make it start, I now hit go. 1, 2, beautiful, and it does that beep, beep, beep to let me know, okay, my program is done. The code that I put in, which was up, up, is over. Starting square, and I put the Beebot on the starting square. Now, do you see the number 1? Yeah. Point to number 1. Beautiful. I wanted the Beebot to go up 1 square. Where's square 2?
On the top. On the top.
What button would I hit?
2.
There is no 2. Do I hit up, down, left, or right? I hit up 2 times. That's where the 2 comes in. You're right. You'd hit up 2 times. Up, up. He would go boop, boop. But now, I wanted him to go
Right.
to the end. Here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to look at this, stay where you are, talk to the people next to you, and try and figure out what you think we would do to get the robot to the end. You talk right now for 30 seconds. Go. All right, he's reset. Hit 2 forward. 1, 2. And now hit go. 1. Okay, so our plan worked so far. Who said that? Naz. You said 2 up will get us there. Beautiful. Reset. Boop. We gotta hit up, then up. That comma's that then. What do I want to try next? What do you think, Colby?
Right.
Okay, so now Colby's going to try the right. So, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, I want you to hit, everyone stay where you are, watch Colby, hit up, up, right, go. One, two, right. Now wait, we're not there, we're not in the end. Who can help Colby? What do we need to do? Raise your hand if you think it's right. Again. Raise your hand if you think it's up again. Let's try right, then right. Because most people raise your hands, you want it right, then right. So here's what we gotta do. This is the hardest step. Bring it back to start. Hit the X button to clear. And now you're gonna hit the code that we wrote. Up, up, right, right, go. Watch. Up, up, right, right. Oh no, we made a mistake. That's okay, because you are computer scientists, and you just found a bug in your code, a glitch. Guess what that glitch was? I'll tell you. It was this last one. We don't want it to go right again. You, my friend, said, what do you think you want to hit? Up. So let's rewrite this. Up. Let's try that. Wait, what do I do? You know, Colby, what do you do? He did the right first step. He did the right second step. He put it in the start spot. He hit the X button. Up, up, right. No, where's the up? Yes, go. Up, up, right.
So this teacher does a really effective job of showing students how to use the Beebot from the very beginning, emphasizing the important functions of the robot. So let's go back to our robot diagram a minute just to discuss. He said up instead of forward, but it's important to emphasize to students when they are using the Beebot that the turn buttons, both right and left, only turn the Beebot in its space. It does not turn and advance any spaces. So students have to learn sequentially how to code the instructions one space at a time, one turn at a time to reach their destination. And like in the example, those students were coding up, up, right, up, and then the go button was getting them started with that. A typical Beebot course would be a 4x4 block course if you were creating a board on poster board. Beebots move in 15 centimeter increments forward. So the turn that Beebots make, they turn on their own space and do not move forward, but when they do move forward, it's in 15 centimeter increments. So how can we use this activity with students in the classroom to augment instruction and to help them understand things? This is one activity that I created for a second grade class who was working on 2-digit addition. And so you will have a link here to the game slides, which are just the problems. And then I created a basic math board, which you'll see on the next slide, which has the answer to the questions that are here. So let me set that up for you, and then I will show you that activity. Okay, so in a classroom setting, I would have divided my class into groups and given each of the groups a board like you see on the left. The answers to the math problems would be in random locations on the board. So each board is different so that students are having to work with the people in their group to code their robot to the correct location. And so over on the right hand side, you see the board that I used. And what I started with was just pulling up a problem to start and having them figure out how we would code using this answer board. So they would tell me the answer was 22, and the star is where their robot would begin, which is always this square. And then I would have them tell me how I would code to that location. And so what I would say is, okay, how do we code to this location? And the goal would be to get students to say forward, turn right, forward to get to the 22. And we would do some examples like that. So then I would give them their first problem in a group. And because this is a Math Foundations activity, students are using number blocks and square blocks to count out these problems and then find the answer on the board and then code the robot to the answer. So it allowed them to practice a skill that they were doing in the regular classroom when they came for media class, but then to also reactivate using those tools from Math Foundations as well. So for this first problem, they would be looking to find 35 on their board. On this particular board, we would want to code to 35. So to code to 35 from this location, we would start by turning right and then going forward one time, and then would press the green go button. Now, other students in other groups, their 35 may be over here or in another location. So again, the problem answers were not in the same square each time. But we would just move through these different problems. Students would code their robots. I would check the location for comprehension and go through. And this activity took us about 2 weeks to complete because the first week they were a little slow with the robots. They had not used those before and needed to kind of learn how the robots worked, and so they were a little bit slower. So we did a couple of problems with a lot of assistance from me. I did a lot of walking around and saying, okay, make sure you code forward, make sure you turn. Turning does not mean your robot's going to move forward. And then the second week, we started where we left off and finished to complete the math activity. Another great use of Beebots in the classroom is when you are doing any kind of vocabulary review or activity. In this particular example, these are the Spanish words for various animals, and you could use a slide deck with the English and have students navigate to the Spanish. This could be useful in the language arts classroom to review vocabulary. If you were completing a unit on a novel and you had vocabulary for students from that novel, you could replace any of the words here with that and have them navigate the Beebot to that word. One really useful thing to have in your classroom to go along with your Beebots is a blank 4x4 board with those 15 by 15 centimeter squares. If you put Velcro in the middle of those, once you have laminated that board, you can take blank cards and create various vocabulary activities, and then students can use the Beebot to navigate to those correct words just to practice that vocabulary. This list of Beebot resources will give you places to purchase Beebots and also lesson resources. First, to purchase the Beebot. Beebots are around $80 per. The Terrapin logo retailers, that is the manufacturer of the Beebot, but you can also find them on Amazon. If you have a class of about 20 students, I would say 3 to 4 robots are probably enough for your kids to use them. They work really well in groups. I use them a lot in groups, and they're real successful in that venue. Lesson resources are listed here. Some of the things are from the UK, which means that some of the spellings may be a little bit different, but most of these resources are completely free, and you can go in and print those and download those and customize those so that they fit the purpose that you are using those for in the classroom. So, are you feeling inspired? Connect with us using the Padlet linked below and share any ways that you might use Beebots in your classroom. We're going to move on to talk about another robot, and this time we're going to be discussing a Sphero. A Sphero is a spherical robot that can be paired with a tablet or a smartphone. You can change the color, the play, different missions, and control the movements from a Bluetooth paired device. In my case, I have a cart of mini iPads and my students connect with that. You can also connect with a Windows laptop or a Chromebook, or you can also use a phone if students have that available. Think you haven't seen one before? Well, how about this guy? This is BB-8, and the Sphero company designed BB-8 specifically for the Star Wars movies, and Spheros sells a BB-8 that you can buy. It can't be coded, but it can be used with the controls in Sphero EDU. So let's see Spheros in action. So this is the Sphero Bolt. It's one of the different Spheros that is available. This is actually the Sphero that I have. And the emphasis of this video is to show that this isn't just a toy, that this is a tool that can be used inside of the classroom. You also got a peek at the Sphero EDU coding app in that video that we just watched. So when I do Spheros with students, this is kind of an instructional plan for rolling out Spheros. On the first day, I introduce the Spheros, I show them how they work, I explain how they pair with the devices that we use, and in our case, we use mini iPads, and I allow them to free play with the devices for the class period. I have 5th and 8th grade and 6th and 7th students for 40 minutes, and that first day, we usually take about 10 to 15 minutes for everyone to get robots and get them paired, and then I just let them kind of free play. And it's just like when we discussed in Code It Like It Hot, that exploration time is really important for students to practice the controls and discover how to move the robot from place to place. Day 2, we introduce the Sphero EDU app, and I show them how to code using the coding program that's there. And so once students have paired with a robot, we talk about how to use the EDU program, which I'm going to show you in just a second, and how to build a program. And then students can kind of play with what some of the coding commands are and just practice using that. On day 3, we create some courses on the floor with masking tape and allow students to code the robot through the course. And this is just kind of a practice day. We try to keep the courses fairly simple so that students are only having to move 3 or 4 different directions and ways to get to the end of the course. And then day 4 and 5, we have our coding competition, and we have 4 to 5 courses depending on the number of students that you have taped out on the floor, and students have a card, and each time they successfully code through a course, they check that course off and move on to the next course. And you can have prizes for students as some kind of an incentive, like you can say the first person that gets through all the courses the fastest. You can have prizes for those completing the courses. Most courses completed in the amount of time, because I know the amount of instructional time that you would have would be different depending on your students. On the first day of instruction with students, we spend a good amount of time discussing how to pair their Sphero with their device and how to use the app on the device to control the Sphero. And so let's look at how to do that right now. We're going to be using the Sphero EDU app, which I have loaded onto my device. And let me disconnect, and then I will show you how we connect to a robot. So if I just open up the Sphero EDU program, up in the upper right hand corner, I'm going to see this button, which is the drive button, and that's going to allow me to connect to a Sphero in order to control it. So I'm going to click on the drive button. On an iPad, you might see a drive button down here in the lower left hand corner. So just look for this icon. The process is almost identical. And then I'm going to find the code on my Sphero bolt. So when you wake up the robot, by lifting it off of the charger, it should power on. And across the top of the robot, you're going to see a code, an SB, and then a 4-digit code. And so the one I'm going to pair with is 2742. So I'm going to click on that. And then it's going to connect to my robot and open the drive program automatically. And so this is going to let me, because I'm using a laptop, I can use these keyboard controls that are here to control my device. But I usually start out by talking to students about aiming. Aiming is super important. So we want to make sure that we turn the device so that the blue tail is facing us, and that allows me to know the direction that my device is going to be going. If the blue tail is facing me, when I press W on my keyboard or forward on a different device, I know that my Sphero is going to go forward. If it isn't aimed properly, then it may not go the direction that I expect it to. The next control that we have is speed, and I talk to students about making sure that we turn the speed down to a speed that's going to be controllable. The faster that the Sphero is set, the harder it is to control in terms of direction. And this is really important. We don't want kids running Spheros into other Spheros or other people's feet or the wall or cabinets or whatever obstacles that you may have in your classroom. So I try to get students to turn it down about midway and to see how that works for them. And as they get better at controlling it, then they can do that. And then we have a color wheel, and we can set the color that shows up on the top of our Sphero. And when we talk about coding the Spheros, we'll talk about the different designs and things that we can put on the top of the Sphero by using the matrix animation. But this is just a solid color control, and this is a good way for students to keep track of where their robot goes. Depending on how many robots you have in the classroom, I have a set of 15, it can be difficult for students to keep up with where their robot is. So if they've lost it and they can change the color and they know that they're changing the color, then they can quickly identify where their robot is and get it back to a safe place to be. I usually let students use this program the first full day that we do Spheros. Again, that exploration time is super important for them to learn how to use the controls and to move on to the next step, which would be coding. So let's get to know the Sphero EDU coding app. If you joined me for Code It Like It's Heart, which is part 1 of this instruction, we looked at Scratch and we looked at Microsoft MakeCode. So what you'll see when I show you this Sphero EDU app is that it looks very similar. So I'm going to pull the app up. And if I had a robot and we're going to connect to a robot, it looks slightly different on an iPad, but this icon would allow me to choose the kind of Sphero that I have, which again is the Bolt, and to connect with that. But we're not going to do that right now because you don't have to be connected to a robot in order to write a program, just when you're at the point of running a program. So I'm going to come over here and go to My Programs. I'll go to Create a Program to make a new one. And there are a couple of different options here. Texting assumes that students know some programming language. Drawing is very simple to program, but we're going to talk about blocks because that's the kind of programming that we know how to do. So I'm going to call this a test program, and we'll leave it set to blocks. And again, you need to choose the kind of robot that you have. And I actually have the Sphero Bolt, so I'll click on that and make sure that's selected, and that's going to open up a brand new program. And one thing that you'll notice is we have this green start button. This green start button is what gets our code started, and it is connected to this black on start program box. And so any code that I select down here from the bottom must be connected to this box, but I can pick it up and move it around all over the screen. So I'm just going to set that here. Let's look at movements first, and this is probably the most used piece of movement code that we have. But we have a couple of parameters set. So this is roll. If I leave it set at 0, then my robot is going to go straight forward. If I set it to a different heading, so say I set it to 90 degrees, it's going to go to my right. So I'll leave it at 90 degrees. I can set a speed. Most of the students, they'll always turn the speed all the way up. So I try to caution them, make sure we're just doing about halfway, because speed and time are related. The lesson I try to tell students is if they set the speed all the way up and they set it for what they think would be a short amount of time, like 30 seconds, that sphere is going to go a really long way. So to start out with small time increments and small speed, and then adjust those to make it go the distance that you want it to go. So we'll adjust our time, which is in seconds, and I'm just going to do 2 seconds. And so that's a movement that I can make. I can attach multiple movement blocks. So if I have students who are working on moving through a course and the first step is going to the right, and then I want them to go forward, I can put another block up here. If I'm going forward, remember, I'm going to leave it set. My heading would be 0 degrees. I can leave my speed about midway. And I can set my time. And again, these are the things that we would need to adjust depending on the length that we are traveling in that direction. So if I did this speed and it ended up being way too far, I would want to cut down on the speed or cut down on the time, or perhaps cut down on both of those things in order to accomplish that distance. The other options that we have are sounds. And students really think these are very fun, but this one, play random sound, I'm going to drag that up here. And if you click on random, you have a lot of different options that are here. There's some gaming sounds. There are animal sounds. So let's just pick an animal sound if I wanted to do a dog. And the sound actually does not come out of the device, but rather it comes out of whatever you have paired with it, your iPad, your laptop, your Chromebook, your phone, etc. It doesn't come out of the Sphero. And so if we have this wait, that's going to stop anything else that we put below this code because it's waiting for something else to happen. But so I'm going to change that to continue because we want it to continue reading the code that is below. I'm going to go to lights next, and that's between movements and sounds. And one that students really like is this matrix animations. I'm going to drag that up. And to pick a matrix animation, I'm going to click on this grid of black circles. And when I click on that, that's going to give me some choices down here at the bottom that I can pick for that. So that if I want to do a red X or a red heart, and I can scroll down to see some more of these. There's a rainbow, there's a smiley face, there's a lion. And then also by clicking on this edit button, students can create their own matrix animation. And a lot of students really like to do that a lot. They like to put their initials on there or their name, and that's just another really cool thing to do. So I'm going to leave it set on the lion and click the check button. And it's going to loop right now. And I can change that so that it only does it once. So again, if you have a loop here, your code runs top to bottom. If we run a loop here, your code is really going to stop right here and rerun this over and over again. And we want it to move on. So we're going to have it do that once. And then we have some other choices down here. You've got the option to loop movement. So if you want it to turn in a circle, so let's say we're over here and we want it to spin for so many degrees, and we want it to loop and do that a couple of times. I would pull an operator block, control block, excuse me, up here. And I'm going to say I want this to loop 3 times. And then I'm going to go back to movements. I'm going to have it spin. And I'm going to have it do a circle. So we want it to spin in a circle 360 degrees for 1 second. And it's going to run that loop 3 times. So that's going to spin 3 times in a circle. So once I have all of my program created and everything is the way that I want it, remember this is the button that we would use to pair with our device. And the aim button is really important as well. When we looked at the controls for the Sphero, you were able to see that the aim button allows you to move the Sphero so that the tail of the Sphero, the blue dot, is facing you and you know which direction that it's moving. So I always tell students if something's not working right, if it's not moving in the right direction, make sure that you are aiming your device before you send it off. So we would connect and aim. And then when we click on start, our program should run from top to bottom. You may be asking yourself, how can Spheros, or any robots for that matter, enhance classroom instruction? Let's look at a few examples of how we can use these to prop up our core content. This first activity is called Build a Story, and you can use any story. You can use a fairy tale, you can use a tall tale, whatever you happen to be covering in the classroom. On the floor, lay elements of a story out so that students can see them. So a variety of characters that fit within the specific story, settings, actions that are going to take place, etc. Anything that you want to include in the story. Then give each group of students that you have a Sphero and have them navigate to story elements. And this is a great opportunity to mash up with another app like Flipgrid and have them record the story that they make with their Sphero. So they can choose a character and choose a setting, and then someone can record the intro to the story. Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs that lived in a forest, etc., and just continue to build upon this activity as you move forward. Materials needed would be the Spheros, your story element cards, so the characters for the story, the settings, actions that are going to take place, and then access to whatever format that you want students to create the end product from their building the story. Vocabulary practice, and in this particular instance we're going to use a maze. So have students build a maze on the floor, again in groups, using available materials. If you have Legos work really well and students are really motivated to work with Legos. Then create some vocabulary cards and place them at various locations in the maze. Call out definitions or sentences with fill in the blank and have students navigate to the correct answer, and then just circulate around the room and check for correctness. And depending on the age of the student and their experience with the Spheros, if you want to make it a little harder, you can have them code to the correct answer and just check. This is a really fun way for students to practice knowledge that they're learning in the classroom in a way that feels like a game activity to them. Math problems, and specifically using angles and degrees. If you'll recall, when we talked about coding in the coding app for Sphero EDU, all of the movements are in that degree field. And so I would give students a set of direction cards and know the design that it's going to make ahead of time, and then have them navigate their Sphero by traveling in the direction based on the instructions on the card, and then have them tape out the path that they take on the floor, and then just check their course to see if it matches the course that you would do ahead of time as your answer key. Are you feeling inspired? Just like with Beebots, your input into this particular instruction is super important. You can join the discussion on this Padlet and let me know how you would use Spheros in the classroom. The last robot we're going to talk about in this presentation is going to be the Lego EV3, which is part of their Mindstorm collection. This is an example of what the robot looks like. This is actually called the Brick, and it has lots of different motors that connect to it and just introduces students to the basics of robotics and coding. The key component of the Mindstorm EV3 is this brick, which is called by the Lego folks. And this is a diagram that's going to show you the different ports on that brick. You have a USB port on the very top, which allows you to connect to a computer or laptop device, which you would use if you're going to download
a program that you are doing inside of the Mindstorm coding program, which we'll look at in just a few minutes. You have a display on the top and navigation buttons. On the bottom of the device, you have sensor input ports, and these connect to a variety of different sensors that are available for the EV3. There's a light sensor and a color sensor, and if you have these sensors connected to these ports, it can assist in navigating your robot based on the color that the sensor sees. There's a place on the side where you can connect a USB port for Wi-Fi and then a memory expansion card reader. And then on the very top are your output ports for your motors. Motors would include wheels. This is how you would connect wheels to make your EV3 move, etc. And these are the different motors that are available. You get 2 large motors in a standard kit, a medium motor, there's a touch sensor, a color sensor, and you can see down at the bottom, you've got like a remote control sensor, and then it comes with a remote. Usually with the color sensor, you can do a light sensor too. It just depends on what you connect to that particular one. So let's see what the EV3 looks like in action. So you can see from this video, it's very easy to build a robot. And if you have students or you have your own personal children who are big Lego fans, you can see the appeal of doing this type of robotics because it does activate that interest in Legos and that building skill that they develop there and just kind of kicks it up a notch. So there are a couple of caveats about the EV3. That EV3 model has been retired, and they have a new model, which is called Robot Inventor 51515, that retails for about $359. The EV3 core sets, which would be the brick and then the motors and the basic pieces to build several different basic robots, can be purchased from eBay or Craigslist, and the prices on those are going to vary. But one thing I would recommend that you do post-COVID is look around your school. A lot of schools had robotics teams prior to COVID. And then without there being competitions for the past couple of years, those robots are just sitting in a box somewhere in someone's closet. And this could be a great way for you to jump in and get those and start using those with your students without having to invest a lot of money. Some of the sets for the retired EV3s are upwards of about $700. So look around to see if you can catch a deal, but I would also really check around your school to see if there are not some sets that are not being used. The coding software is Block coding software, and it is free, and it's available to be used on iPads, Chromebooks, or a Windows device. And the program works just like the other block coding programs that we have looked at. And in this particular video, it looks a lot like the Sphero EDU program, and it's going to allow the user to build a code and then connect their device to that brick and download the program to it. So let's take a look at that EV3 program. Let me open it up. And so unlike the Sphero, we are not going to be able to wirelessly connect to the brick. What's going to happen is that we would build the program here not connected to the brick, and then you would connect your device with a USB cord to the brick and download the program to your device. So I'm going to do a new project from the front screen, and you'll see that this looks a lot like the other block coding programs that we have looked at in this session, Robot It Like It's Hot, and also in the part 1 session, Code It Like It's Hot. So we'll start with running the motors, and you can see that these codes control specific motors. So if I pull this code here, I'm talking about motor A. And if I click down, you can see that I have 4 available motors, and I am telling it with this code which motor that I want to do this particular thing. So if I have 4 wheels on 4 motors on my device, I'm going to need to pull 4 pieces of code so that all of my wheels are doing the same thing. And you can think about, what would happen if we don't do this. So if some of these are doing 1 rotation and this one's doing 3 rotations, you're going to get some spinning of your device. So we'll pull 1 more. So that's all 4 of the motors that I have. I want them to go clockwise, which means my device, depending on how it's on there, is going to go forward. And I'm probably going to set each of these to the same number again because we want it to roll in a straight direction. So that's going to set 5 rotations of all of my motors going forward. And there's other controls that are here in the movement area. You've got movement speed. So if I want it to go 50%, so I don't want it to go the full speed, I can set that here. Just like some of the other ones, you have the option of playing sounds. So we can put that code here. And we can set that. It's not going to give us a demonstration of what it sounds like, but we can set that to one of those, play until done. I can set my volume to 100%. And again, just like with our other block coding programs, it's going to run that program from top to bottom. So it's going to do these things at the same time, where it's going to adjust our movement speed. Then it's going to play the sound and set the volume. Events, those are the things that get things started. That's where our when program starts comes from. We have some wait commands and different things that you can put in there, some loops. If I want it to do something and repeat several times, I may pull this block out here and say that I want this to repeat 10 times. I may stick that inside of a repeat block and then connect that there, and then it's going to do this 10 times. So it's going to do 5 rotations 10 times. So that's a pretty far distance if you do that math. When I have everything ready and everything is the way that I want it to be, I want to give it a name up here in the top. So I don't want it to be called Project 1. I'm going to call it Test Program. And then I'm going to save it. And then once you connect your device, you're going to click this button, and on your device, there is a download button that you will click to download this program. And your brick will hold multiple programs, and you'll see the reason why that's a good idea in just a minute when we start talking about different challenges that you can do with the EV3s. So the first challenge I want to talk about is building a catapult. When I do EV3s with students, we usually spend about 2 weeks on it, and it usually takes them a couple of days to build a basic robot and to see kind of how that process works. So then one of the first things we do is we build a catapult. You really only need one motor to do a catapult, and then you just use the buttons on the top of the display, so you don't need to make a program to do catapults. And my students were tossing a Lego minifigure, or they would call it a Lego minifig. And so whoever tosses it the farthest just wins. And so you just start in the floor. Once they've built their catapult, they press their button, they toss the minifig, and then you see who throws it the farthest. And so I have a video of that I'll show you so you can kind of see what that looks like.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Mr. Hino with Miss Hino's Lego Robotics. Today's video, I'm going to show you the Lego Mindstorms EV3 launcher. It's a really cool project. You're going to have to see it, okay? Stay with me. And after watching this video, if you like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right there. Come on, I know you can do it. Okay, this Lego Mindstorms EV3 launcher, no, it is not a original build by me. It's one that we found on the internet and built and programmed. You're going to have to check this out. Come on, let's go check it out. So here we have it. Here is the launcher. What I really like about it is it uses the tension with the axles here and the activation of the touch sensor down here. As soon as I put this ball in here, it's going to know that it's there because it presses down on that touch sensor, and it activates the program to launch this wiffle ball. So check this out. Look how far that.
So you can see from this video that they did use a program in this particular example, but you don't have to use a program. You can do it simply with the motor and the control on the top of the brick. And students can design the catapult in any way that they think would make the most sense. So this is a specific design, but they can make any kind of design that they want to. And this is a really fun challenge to do with students. The next challenge that my students really enjoyed is BattleBots. And so you saw a little bit of that in the video that was before, but this particular challenge does use the coding program. And so the object of this is to be the last robot in the circle. And so you have two robots that they may charge each other. One of them may back out of the way and let the other one run out. But however it is accomplished, you want to be the last robot standing. And a lot of times I talk to students about having 2 or 3 different programs because the program that you run is going to depend on who your competitor is. So if this is your really good friend and you know this person is really aggressive and forward, then maybe you design a program where you just kind of move out of the way and let them run out of the ring. If this is someone who maybe is not natured that way, but maybe the opposite, then maybe you have a more aggressive program where you are pushing and running into their robot. It is not hard on the robots to have this type of competition. They are not permanently damaged at all, but the kids really do enjoy this and think that it's a lot of fun. And I have a video of this that I'll show you. This one's actually called Sumo Wrestling, but this is the circle that you would have, and you'll be able to see the robots pushing each other out.
Ready, set, wrestle.
Okay, so you can see that the one robot was able to push the other robot out of the circle to accomplish winning that particular match. This is a really good challenge to do with students. You can set up brackets, kind of like the Sweet 16 in March Madness, and they really think that's a lot of fun, and it just teaches a lot of those skills. Just like our other two robots, I'm really interested to hear what your ideas would be for sharing the EV3s with your classroom and how you would incorporate that into instruction. There's a Padlet linked here. I would love for you to join our discussion about how to use EV3s in the classroom. Thank you so much for joining me today for Robot It Like It's Hot. If you need assistance with anything that has been covered in this presentation, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is here on the screen. This is my email address, my school phone number, and please feel free to connect with me on Twitter. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I hope you have a great rest of your day.